Hello, all you patrons. We've missed you. Here, we're back finally.
And we have missed you so much. In fact, we always say around here that without our patrons, we wouldn't have a show. And when we don't have a show, we don't have our patrons.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh well, never mind. But notice that they're all dressed for spring. The gentlemen's suits are lighter. The ladies are wearing lighter dresses. Spring is sprung.
That's right. It's nice.
Yeah, I like it. The daffodils and tulips are out. Well, you wouldn't know that in LA because you've got flowers all the time, so you don't care. But in normal areas of the world, where we have a progression of something called seasons, really, we have these things. There are four of them. It's not endless summer that just keeps going with a rainy season to break up the monotony once a year. No, no, no. There are four of these things. Well, we've emerged here from the cold. And you see, when you emerge from the cold, something magical happens. The snow begins to contract. And these little white flowers appear. They're called snowdrops. And then big yellow flowers appear. They're called daffodils. And then an incredibly varied set of flowers appear, many different colors. They're called tulips. And when the tulips appear, spring has sprung. And people dress the way our patrons are dressed in studio right now. And, well, you get the idea.
Awesome. I love
it. Is. It is. We are approaching the midway point in Lent. We're not there yet, but we're slowly, Mikarem is coming up. I think a week from next Thursday, I think, will be Mikarem.
Okay.
And then a week from tomorrow being Sunday, will be the fourth Sunday in Lent, which is?
I don't know. What is it?
All right, I'm going to give you a hint. I don't want to make it easy for you.
Gaudete Sunday? I don't know.
Well, Laetare, I think.
Laetare.
But
Laetare.
It's one or the other.
There's always two Sundays that people always talk about, Gaudete and Laetare.
Exactly. And that's because on both Sundays, the priest wears not the purple of Lent and Advent.
Oh, the pink.
No. Not the pink. This is another one. The old rose.
Oh, old rose.
We don't say pink.
Oh, okay.
And by old rose, I don't mean the lady in the cleaning department that you had working till she was 88. Poor old Rose. Did she ever retire or is she still working?
Some people, that's important for them.
You're saying
what are you going to do if they're not working?
So you're saying she's still working?
We provide a sense of community, a sense of purpose, a sense of stability. We're family,
she can't afford.
Charles.
Yeah, she can't afford to live on the lousy little pension you'd give her, so she still has to work at 88. Very nice.
Well,
did you give her a place to sleep?
Charles, those are private details that obviously I can't disclose. That's not fair to her.
Oh, I see. Okay, well. All right, poor old Rose. Well, anyway, give her my best when you see her toiling away.
I will.
Poor old lady, she's been working there since before the building was built. I mean, man, I remember your Uncle Giovanni used to call her that pretty young thing.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I'll say it was a long time ago. But she's still there, Got to give it to old Rose, especially on Laetare Sunday. Yeah, but you recall that was when it was on such a Sunday, I forget whether it was Advent or Lent, that our friend Mike was almost driven around the bend by the priest.
Oh,
you remember the story? Yeah.
The priest said he looked pretty in pink.
That, ladies and gentlemen, We have a friend who is, shall we say, not excessively LGBTQ MLXL5 sensitive. And one Sunday, we're all at Mass, and the priest comes literally mincing out, and he says, "I've always looked pretty in pink." We had to restrain Mike. He started to, but we pulled him down. I'll never forget that, though.
Yeah.
"I always look pretty in pink." Yeah, well, that's a matter of opinion, Father. I think we should take a vote on that one. But I don't know that his being in rose vestments helped his appearance at all.
Okay. I'm not too into fashion, Charles.
Neither was he from the appearances.
Wow.
Anyway, moving along.
Are you ready for questions?
The last time I heard that, it was a cop saying it. But all right, sure. Sure, let's do it to it. I don't care. It's a whole new age where the world trembles on the verge of a nuclear holocaust. The doomsday clock is 100 seconds before midnight as we speak. So what's a little thing like being ready to answer questions? I ask you.
Indeed. All right, our buddy Andrew from New Jersey.
Hey, Andrew.
He says, "Hello, gentlemen, and greetings from the land of Frank Sinatra, Bon Jovi, and whatever it is that goes on in Atlantic City."
Ooh, and Snooki. We never want to forget Snooki.
We don't talk about Trump in New York. I thought isn't Trump Plaza in New York City, in Atlantic City? I thought that was his place.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, it was also the setting for Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, I actually did watch that show. Of course.
In Tutankhamun's day. Well, yeah, I know you did. Your one of the characters was based on your cousin Alberto.
I don't recommend the show, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah.
No, and by the way Alberto, who's not given that name in the show, the way he's presented was very, very unlike the reality. In real life, Alberto Franchini was a very nice person.
Yes. Well said, Charles. All right. So
really nice, very nice person. He wouldn't have harmed a fly. And everything that was said about him, and even the stretch of the pen, lies.
Good. Well done, Charles. So Andrew says, "Today I want to ask what Charles knows about a fellow Austrian, the Viennese socialite and wife of composer Gustav Mahler, Alma Mahler. I have a graduate degree in music history, and while studying her husband Gustav, I always found Alma to be quite interesting, because while being very intelligent and also composing a good deal of music in her own right, she also seemed to have a fair amount of, apologies if this is too bold of a comparison, Kardashian-style scandals."
Ooh.
That seemed out of place for pre-World War I Austria-Hungary. Despite her many affairs, she still seems to have impacted not only the work of her three husbands, but also the larger culture of the early 20th century Europe. She was an important figure in promoting different artistic movements, such as the Vienna Secession movement. Perhaps Charles can also talk about the intersection of various different fields of this time, as Alma seemed to bring together diverse individuals from different backgrounds. Everyone from Sigmund Freud to Thomas Mann to Igor Stravinsky to Emil Zuckerkindl to Edvard Munch seems to have crossed her path in a way that the arts and sciences don't seem to intermingle anymore. I don't have a question so much as a request that Charles elaborate on Alma as well as this interesting social period of history, especially in regards to the development of the avant-garde movements even before World War I.
Well, it's funny. Alma Mahler, she was an interesting characterette. Uh, difficult, difficult life to say the least. She was Jewish. She married Mahler, who was a lot older than she was. The first part of their marriage, uh, Mahler was very dismissive of her own musical efforts. Uh, they had a child. They had several children, one of whom died, I think, and she had several children who died young. Uh, it was very sad. Um, and she was unfaithful to Mahler. Uh, and they had a big, not a breakup, but a big to do. He ended up going to see Sigmund Freud, uh, who was practicing psychiatry. And apparently, Freud convinced him that he really, really, really should look at his wife's work more seriously. And he did. And that was the end of her affairs for the rest of their married life, because he took a very serious interest in her work as a musician and helped her. And then and for the rest of their marriage, she was faithful to him, which I think gives you kind of an insight into her. Uh, when she died, when he died rather, she ended up taking up with several people, eventually uh, settling on the scientist Gropius. Their marriage went on. World War One came, backwards and forwards. The man she ended up with was the famous writer Franz Werfel, who was also Jewish. Uh, and the thing you got to understand
That,
about Austria,
that's the guy who wrote Song of Bernadette, no?
you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, sorry.
Uh, and therein lies the tale. Because of Hitler, they came to the United States. They ended up in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. He wrote scripts. The Mahler House is a big deal to this day. Uh, she converted to Catholicism, and he was seen on his deathbed by her friend who was a Jesuit priest. Uh,
Wait, eh, she married him and then she
yeah,
converted to Catholicism?
yes,
But wasn't he was a Jew?
he was. So was she.
Oh, she was a Jew. Okay. I for some reason I assumed she was something else in Austria. Okay.
No, they were both Jews.
I see.
So she converts, and he had always had an interest in Catholicism, as shown by Song of Bernadette and a lot of other stuff he wrote. But it wasn't until his deathbed that he was actually received.
Wow.
Uh, and she came in quite a bit before him. So, as far as it being a scandal, fin de siècle, end of the century Vienna, that century being 19th to 20th, uh, they had a lot of intellectuals, all of whom knew each other in many different walks of life. It was a very fruitful time, intellectually speaking. But scandal was not unknown, to say the least. Don't forget that Blessed Emperor Karl's father died of syphilis. Well, believe me, that didn't happen by magic. Syphilis takes a little bit of work to get. It's not like COVID.
Hmm.
Could you imagine if the fight against syphilis had been coordinated by modern governments? What that would have been like? We've got to keep everyone segregated from everyone else in case they do something. It's the only way we can fight syphilis. Isolate everybody.
Wow.
But you can't take my baby from me. You might give him syphilis, man. What?
Wow.
Contact can do it.
All right. Question from Lewis, who says, I would be interested to hear Charles talk about the Hohenzollern Dynasty, especially their origins and how things have developed for them after the First and Second World Wars, and the death in exile of Wilhelm II. What were his heirs like? Have any of them tried to press their claims? And what sort of condition is German monarchism in these days? Is the effective abolition of Prussia after World War II and different monarchical loyalties in, say, Saxony and Bavaria a problem for any sort of restoration in Germany?
Well, the Hohenzollern started out in southwestern Germany, in what's now Baden-Württemberg, in a little place called Zollern. They were the lords of Zollern. They were allies of the Hohenstaufens, who were the emperors of medieval period for a while. And the castle that they lived in, Hohenzollern, they still own. They've been there for 1,000 years. But the family had a number of different branches, one of which became the electors of Brandenburg, and one member of which at the Reformation was the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order in Prussia. So, becoming Protestant, he dumped his vows and married and started the Prussian House of Hohenzollern. Eventually, they died out, and their nearest kinsmen were the electors of Brandenburg. So the electors became as well dukes of Prussia. But in 1715, the elector of Brandenburg, Frederick William, the Great Elector, having conquered more territory in various wars, like the Grand Alliance and the Spanish Succession, decided he wanted to be a king. And so he declared himself king, not of Prussia, but in Prussia. Prussia being outside the Holy Roman Empire. It was only when he was able to get the Habsburg Holy Roman Emperor to agree to his elevation to the status of king that the Hohenzollerns became kings of Prussia. So, the most famous of them in the 18th century, and the man who really put the little kingdom of Prussia on the map, was a man called Frederick II, whom the Prussians ever after called Frederick the Great. And he certainly was a great warrior and so on. He was a complete atheist. He had no belief in anything. So religious toleration came easy to him because, one band of insane people are very much like another as long as they're loyal.
Mm.
So he introduced toleration even for Catholics in Prussia. He also allowed the Jesuits to open schools, which is why, when the Jesuit order was suppressed, both he and his equally unbelieving colleague in Russia, Catherine the Great, refused to allow the bull of suppression to be published in their countries. So the Jesuits continued in Prussia and Russia until they were revived in the rest of the world in 1817. So they provided the continuity of the order, which is kind of ironic. Yeah. Frederick died without heirs because he didn't like chicks. And unfortunately, if you don't like chicks, it's very hard to have a child by one. No, it's true. It's very difficult. So his nephew, Frederick William II, became king. He died. His son, Frederick William III, was the king of Prussia during the Napoleonic Wars and one of the victors of the Congress of Vienna. He died in 1830, was replaced by my favorite Hohenzollern, Frederick William IV, the romantic on the throne. Now, this was a younger line of the House of Hohenzollern, although they're the biggest. The original line still sat there in their little castle in southwestern Germany. Meanwhile, Frederick William IV dies. His brother, William I, becomes king of Prussia. And he's the king who Bismarck eventually makes. Bismarck is his chancellor. He's the one who maneuvers the Austro-Prussian War that makes Prussia supreme in Germany, the Franco-Prussian War where the French are defeated, and the German Empire is proclaimed. And because of the War of 1867, Austria's allies, the Kingdom of Hanover, the Electorate of Hessen-Kassel, the Grand Duchy of Nassau, they're all annexed by Prussia. But all the other states are left alone when Germany becomes a single empire in 1871. And this is the country that in 1888 Wilhelm II becomes Kaiser of. But being German Kaiser was based upon being King of Prussia. But every one of the constituent states of the German Empire had their own governments. You saw the Kingdom of Bavaria, the Kingdom of Württemberg, the Grand Duchy of Baden, and of course, way down in the southwest, you guessed it, the little Lordship of Hohenzollern, which the Catholic cousins. But one of them became the king of the nascent Kingdom of Romania. So that was where you got the line of the Romanian kings was from the Catholic Hohenzollerns. Well, here we are. Wilhelm II is King of Prussia and Emperor, German Emperor, not Emperor of Germany. German Emperor was the title. And all is well until 1914. They have the big war. Wilhelm abdicates and flees the country. Goes to the Netherlands. The Allies demand that the Dutch give him up as a war criminal. The Dutch refuse. So he lives the rest of his life in a castle called Huisdoorn House. He dies there in 1941. Now, when the Nazis invaded the Netherlands, they offered an honor guard to Wilhelm. He refused it. And he refused to have anything to do with the Nazis because he felt that they had betrayed his friends, the Dutch, who had taken him in and protected him. So he wasn't happy about that. His son, Crown Prince Wilhelm, he went along to get along with the Nazis, but he didn't join the party. Unlike his younger brother, August Wilhelm, who did, hoping that the Nazis would restore the monarchy. Well, they had no intention of doing so, and in fact, hated the monarchy. So much so that Wilhelm's grandson, Louis Wilhelm, rather, he was vaguely connected with the 1944 plot. And had the plotters succeeded in 1944, they would have made him Kaiser. But they didn't. So I said Louis Wilhelm, it's Louis Ferdinand. So Louis Ferdinand inherited the claims to the House of Hohenzollern, and the other kings and princes after 1918, the kings of Bavaria and Saxony and Württemberg, Grand Duke of Baden, all the rest of them. All of these gentlemen continued their headship of their houses and played a greater or lesser role on the local scene. After 1945, of course, the Hohenzollerns and the Saxons and all the East German folk were pushed out by the communists. But the ones resident in West Germany continued to play a local role of different kinds. Louis Ferdinand died about, 20 years ago, and was replaced by his grandson, Prince Georg Wilhelm, who is the current heir to the throne, and is fighting a court battle to regain some property with the government. His marriage a few years ago was a big thing on German television. He went to Vienna for the funeral of the Archduke Otto, and my good friend Axel, who went when he was there for the funeral. And after seeing the Archduke Karl and a whole bunch of other Habsburgs, now Axel lives in Aachen, which is the old imperial capital of Charlemagne. So he saw the various ceremonies and this and that. But it turned out that the hotel he was in was also the hotel Georg Friedrich was in. And he ran into Georg Friedrich, whom he doesn't know. But the heir to the throne asked him if he knew where the ATM was. So he told him. And Axel's comment to me was, it was for the first time in his life, he really felt he was on imperial overload. You know, being in the city of the emperors, Habsburg funeral. There's the German emperor. Okay, very imperial. Very, very imperial. Uh, as far as monarchism in Germany goes, of course, it's been going since 1918. The monarchists were, as I've indicated, very prominent in the resistance to Hitler for all the good it did them afterwards. Nobody gets any credit. Neither the monarchists in Austria nor in Germany got any credit or anything for their resistance to Hitler, except punishment by Hitler. What you got instead were a bunch of part socialist governments afterwards, and a lot of garbage to this day in historiography. So no good deed goes unpunished. But the biggest German monarchist outfit today is called Tradition und Leben, and they would like to see the restoration not just of the King of Prussia as German Emperor in a modern context, but also all the others. It's interesting to note that the large amounts of property that were taken from Germany, that Germany lost after the two world wars, it all came out of Prussia. So the other states are still within Germany. I mean, they lost East Prussia and Schlesien and West Prussia and Pommern and all that, but everything east of the Oder, but that was all in Prussia. So all the other German states are still where they were.
All right. Lewis has another question. He says, does Charles have any strong views on Prince Alexander Nevsky? He is a national hero in Russia and possibly an Orthodox saint, but not well known in the West. My understanding is that he has a mixed legacy as a man of personal piety and virtue who nevertheless resisted attempts to re-Catholicize Russia by the Livonian Order and then a papal delegation. He also protected his people from invasion by the Mongols and how do you say it? Tatars?
Tartars.
Tartars. Okay. Would things have been better if he'd been defeated so Russia could be brought back into the fold?
I don't know about that. You know, a lot of his problem with the church was really his problem with the Teutonic Knights. And it was more of a political and ethnic nature than a religious nature. I don't know that his being defeated by the Tartars would have helped anybody. It's one of those things we'll never know what happened. But I mean, personally, he seems to have been a very good man, and he certainly was not the one who started the schism. It's a problem he inherited.
Okay. Micah said he has 3 questions. Number 1, what's your opinion on Baron von Eugen Sternberg, or the Mad Baron?
He was mad, crazy as a bedbug. But for those who don't know, he was a white Russian leader during the Russian Civil War who fought the communists in Siberia, was pushed out into Mongolia, and for a while he wanted to be the new Genghis Khan, though that didn't work out.
It's interesting. I never thought of that connection before. Do White Russians, the drink, have a connection with White Russians?
No.
No. Okay.
No. Nor do Black Russians.
What is that made of?
You know, I don't think I've ever had one. I've seen them often enough, but I don't think I've ever actually drunk a Black Russian. Let's see. Let's go to Wikipedia, source of all truth.
It has whiskey in it instead of vodka?
That would be a good guess. I don't know. Let's see. 'Cause, you know, I don't think I've ever actually drunk a Black Russian. Let's see. Let's go to Wikipedia, source of all truth. It has whiskey in it instead of vodka. That would be a good guess. I don't know. Let's see. 'Cause, you know, I don't think I've ever actually drunk a Black Russian. Let's see. Black Russian. Oh, here's a good one. What is the difference between White Russian and Black Russian? All right, fair enough. The difference is simply the addition of cream to the mix and a slight change in the quantities. They use the same style of glass, the old-fashioned glass, and are served over ice.
Okay, so the Kahlua makes it black in absence of any cream. That makes sense.
Yep, yep, that's it. Now
Oh,
you know.
okay. Um, Second question from Micah. What's your opinion on Julius Evola?
Inevitable question. Well, I mean, he had some interesting insights. He wasn't stupid, but he was a neo-pagan, and I am not a great friend of Christianity, and so no friend of mine.
What is his role? I mean, who is he? On a Wikipedia article, well, what's the
Well,
overview?
Wikipedia would tell you that he was a how would I say it? He was a great lover of the imperial tradition, Rome, the Ghibellines, and so forth. Uh, but he liked the pagan thing,
What's
and
his?
he
When did he live? What
oh,
century?
sorry, in the 20th century,
Oh, okay.
and he's seen as a great hero by a lot of right-wing thinkers, a lot of fascist thinkers. Those are not the same thing. Uh, a lot of people saw him, and again, he wasn't stupid, and he had a lot of useful insights. But I much prefer Attilio Mordini, the so-called Catholic Evola, who took those insights and did something useful with them because he was a real believing Catholic.
Wow. Okay. What's your opinion on esoteric monarchism slash traditionalism advocated by the prior mentioned men? Ooh.
To the degree that it leads people away from the faith, I'm against it. To the degree that it leads them toward it, I'm for it. But it's like Anglo-Catholicism or anything else. For some people, it's a halfway house to the faith. For other people, it's a halfway house away from the faith.
I don't even know what esoteric means when you put it in front of these words.
Well, what that means, it's connected. We've discussed before traditionalism along the not Catholic traditionalism, but the ideas of people like Rene Guénon, uh, with whom Evola is often also bracketed. The idea that there's this uh, primordial tradition underlying all man's religions,
Oh, I see.
and that the best religion is that which is truest to this primordial tradition. Well, similarly, the idea of the empire is also seen as something along those lines. Uh, again, it's not that it's entirely untrue. It's just that what's true about it is fine. What's false about it is the problem. It's like the old joke: rat poison is 99% nutritional. It's just that 1% is strychnine that,
Yeah.
that gives you issues. And I want to be very clear about this. I know a number of people who have come to the faith because of reading people like Guénon and Evola. But I've also known of people who either left the faith or stayed out of it because they gave them the delusion that you could have the promise without the thing.
I see. So basically, stay away from these guys. Read Mortellini instead, or whoever you said.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. Good.
You
Good.
know,
Uh.
the I'm sorry to disappoint anyone out there who was hoping I'd have a more esoteric answer.
Oh. 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 Okay.
Sorry.
Shucks.
So,
I just.
Curses, foil again.
I'm sorry. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Questions. We'll end the pre-show with two questions from Byron, who's also a big book buyer in the bookstore. So thank you, Byron, for all your patronage.
We're all for you, Byron. You're our kind of guy.
Yeah. My questions are about current geopolitical events. My first question is about Austria and if Charles can provide insight into why it decided not to be a member of NATO. And if he can, please have him do so. Charles, can you?
I can.
Please do so.
Okay. Well, it's like this. After World War II, because Archduke Otto had been able to convince Franklin Roosevelt that Austria was as much a victim of the Nazis in Germany as anywhere else, the Allies agreed that Austria would be restored as an independent country and not as part of Germany. But, like Germany, it would be divided into several occupation zones: French, British, American, Soviet. And the capital of each country, Berlin and Vienna, would be divided up likewise into sectors. The difference is that in Vienna, as opposed to just the 4 sections of Berlin, the Erste Bezirk, would be run by all 4 of them at once, this very strange international administration. But there was one big difference. The big difference was that the 4 allies were able to agree on a single government for Austria, which they were not able to do for Germany, which is why in the end, the Soviets proclaimed the German Democratic Republic in their zone, and the Western Allies, the Federal Republic of Germany, in their zone. You may remember East Germany and West Germany.
Yeah.
But Austria was similarly divided. You had the French zone was Tyrol and places like that. The British zone, the American zone, and then the eastern part of the country, including where I'm sitting right now, was part of the Soviet zone. But they did have a single government initially under the scumbag Karl Renner. And then when he lost, to everyone's surprise, their first election in 1945, he was made president at Stalin's insistence. And a People's Party, Christian Democrat, was made chancellor because he won the election. So a rosary crusade was begun by a local Viennese priest to get the Soviets out of Austria.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, last thing I heard was get the Soviets at. Oh. Okay, sorry. Last thing I heard was get the Soviets out of Austria.
Sure enough, in 1955, they agreed to leave. And the result was what was called the Austrian State Treaty. The Austrian State Treaty, which reestablished Austria's complete independence, the price of the Soviet withdrawal was Austria having written into the founding treaty that they would not join NATO, that they would stay neutral in the Cold War, and they agreed. So that's why. There's been a lot of talk about Austria joining NATO recently, but I don't think anything will come of it.
All right, final question from Byron. He says, for my second question, I asked Charles if Russia, as a state, or Putin, as its leader, has a religious or moral casus belli to invade Ukraine alongside the obvious national security reasons, what the casus belli are, and any historical facts to support it.
No, they don't really. I mean, the problem you have is severalfold. Firstly, as we said before, the Ukrainians, the Russians, and the Belarusians began as the same people, the descendants of an entity called Kievan Rus, which was founded by a Viking family upon a Slavic people. And it was destroyed by the Mongols. And the current national differences between Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians really developed out of who they were dominated by. In the case of the Belarusians, it was Lithuania. In the case of the Ukrainians, it was Poland. In the case of the Russians, it was the Mongols, the Tartars. But nevertheless, all three peoples looked to Kiev as the cradle of their civilization. But I don't see that there's any Casus Belli here. This is a real mess. And it really might just end up in the thing that, I grew up all my life warned about, which is a nuclear war. World War III, which for the past 30 years, I had patted myself on the back, I had escaped. At least at that time, it was a question of facing communism. Now it's Putin, perversion, and God knows what facing each other. And I really would not like to be incinerated for either of them. What is it? Looking quickly at the atomic scientists, yes, 100 seconds to midnight. But that's not impressive. That could be a title for something. 100 seconds to midnight.
Well, what did you just allude to?
The doomsday clock. See, way back in 1947, the Commission of the Atomic Scientists, which were a group of scientists from all over the world involved with nuclear energy and the atom bomb and so forth, put together this thing they call the doomsday clock. And it gets set further closer to midnight is nuclear war. So it's what they consider to be the risk of a nuclear war. And at different times, I mean, you really don't hear too much about it now, but during the Cold War, and they're still going. So, I mean, I'm looking at their thing right now. Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Boy, this makes me feel like I'm back in 1965 just looking at it. Says, Bulletin Science and Security Board condemns Russian invasion of Ukraine. Doomsday clock stays at 100 seconds to midnight. They've got various of their people going on about
So 100 seconds to midnight, does that mean is like the furthest possible? Like what's... I don't understand the gradations here.
Well, I mean, think of a clock, right? Midnight is atomic war. So the clock gets set closer or further to midnight, depending on how...
I know, but I'm asking, like, what's the furthest it can be reasonably set? I don't understand. I mean, is this an actual tool, or I mean, is this an estimation? Is this like DEFCON 5?
It's an estimation. As in Wikipedia's source of all truth, it tells us the clock's original setting in 1947 was 7 minutes to midnight. It has been set backward and forward 24 times since, the farthest from midnight being 17 minutes in 1991. Yay!
That seems so arbitrary. I don't know. That's
It is arbitrary. And the nearest being 100 seconds from 2020 to the present.
Who controls this thing? Who decides, you know what? We're 17 minutes. That seems so random.
It is the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists.
All right then. Well, so what happens? I mean, are we 1 second from midnight? I mean, are we gonna is it gonna be New Year's where it's like we watch we
You see, nuclear war is declared. You see cheering crowds in all the major cities of the world counting down. And they all raise their glasses. Sun seeing old lang syne, and then you have the flashes all over the planet. Should old acquaintance be forgot? I don't know, should it? Oh, gosh, there's the thought. Oh, man. Guy Lombardo on nuclear New Year's Eve. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the nuclear bomb is coming tonight. Should old acquaintance be forgot?
Oh, man. Wow.
Well, one can only hope. As I say, drop the bomb now. After that terrible revelation you gave me about the ice cream parlor, I'm ready.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like the guy in Failsafe. You know, not Failsafe. I can't think of it, with Peter Sellers and, about the
Dr. Strangelove.
Yes. Golly, what's wrong with my mind? Yeah, I feel like Slim Pickens.
In the
That's right. Yahoo! And of course, let's not forget our old friend. Oh man, I tell you, my memory is not working tonight. The very funny, songwriter from Harvard, of course, Tom Lehrer. That's it. It's called. It says. This is a great line of Tom Lehrer's. Goodbye, Mom. I'm off to drop the bomb. He says, this year we've been celebrating the 100th anniversary. The 100th anniversary of the beginning of World War I and the 20th anniversary of the end of World War II. It's been a good year for the war buffs. A number of LPs and television specials have come out capitalizing on this trend with a particular emphasis on the songs of various wars. I feel that if any songs are going to come out of World War III, we'd better start writing them now. I have one here. Might call it a bit of pre-nostalgia. This is the song that some of the boys sang as they went bravely off to World War III. So long, Mom, I'm off to drop the bomb, so don't wait up for me. But while you swelter down there in your shelter, you can see me on your TV. While we're attacking frontally, watch Brinkley and Huntley, describing contrapuntally the cities we have lost. War III was declared. He wasn't scared, no siree. And this is what he said on his way to Armageddon. So long, Mom, I'm off to drop the bomb, so don't wait up for me. But though I may roam, I'll come back to my home, although it may be a pile of debris. Remember, Mommy, I'm off to get a commie, so send me a salami and try to smile somehow. I'll look for you when the war is over, an hour and a half from now.
Wow.
Okay, he did that in 63. Fun stuff.
All right. That's a strange sentiment to send everyone out on, but don't worry.
Well, I just look. This has been the year of reverse nostalgia. We opened in the autumn with the fall of Saigon in Afghanistan, or the summer, I should say, and of course with Pope Francis trying to play Pope Paul VI in suppressing the Tridentine Mass. So now we've got a step further in reviving the Cold War. See, this is an attempt by us boomers to recapture our childhood and youth.
This actually sounds like the way you've structured it and the metaphors you use. It sounds like an actual article from you. Have you written this article yet? Is this a
I
written
wrote
article or
part.
is it coming?
I wrote no. I did write the. I think for Crisis magazine, I wrote about the. I wrote about the Afghanistan and trash can custodians thing.
Yeah, trash can.
And
Yeah.
I said that that's obviously an attempt. But as I'm looking at things now, who has thought of the Commission of Atomic Scientists since I was a kid, or the Doomsday Clock? You don't understand what nostalgia this is for me to be able to say, where the Committee of Atomic Scientists has set the Doomsday Clock to 100 minutes to 100 seconds from midnight. Good night, America, and good luck. This is wonderful. I mean, it makes me feel like I'm a grown-up, because I can be like all the grown-ups on TV when I was a boy, see? And if I feel this way as a mere peon, I have no doubt that my brethren in power really feel like big people now, like they're in suits and they can appear on TV and they're important and people have to listen to them. You know the problem, though?
What?
We're not the men our fathers were.
Ain't that the truth?
We're a bunch of mincing, puling little twits.
Here's a question for you.
All right, here's an answer.
Which people became the boys their fathers were? How long, you know what I mean? Like, how long have we dropped down? Because I know in your mind, at least in terms of a presidency and education, that it started all the way with George Washington.
Well, that's true. But, and of course, there's a theory that all DNA is decaying over time. But I don't know if that's true, but I've heard it. But I would certainly say that in the past.
But that would make sense because that's purely scientific, and that would say that actions and will are subject to DNA, right?
Which they
on some level.
But on some level, that would be true. And certainly that would make the scientists happier anyway, except for the atomic scientists, who would be very unhappy.
I mean, this is kind of like Midnight in Paris, where you're looking to the certain age and it's like, oh, what, my age is not like that age. Well, let me ask you about your dad. Oh, by the way, a lot of people want us to do an episode solely on your dad. We've gotten a lot of comments about this. So that might be something you want to think about. Yeah.
Really?
So did your dad feel that he wasn't the son that his dad, he wasn't the man that his dad was?
Well, that's a little bit difficult to say because his father, who died when he was 6.
Oh, okay.
And he idolized him. He remembered him very well. And his father had a big reputation in the family. I mean, so much so that I heard stories about him from other people, other than my father. In fact, I think I told you the story of running into a man who'd worked with him in silent film.
Yeah.
Which was a surprise. But he certainly tried to emulate his father very much as I've tried to emulate mine. To the degree that he could. There's a reason that he went into the theater, and there's a reason he wrote. Same with me. So I do believe that's true. I don't believe, however, that he felt that there had been such a huge generational drop off. I mean, he lived long enough to be able to look toward my generation as well as back to his own and before. He was of the opinion that World War II had really damaged the country tremendously, if for no other reason than for providing 5 long years wherein a whole generation of children didn't have their parents, or didn't have their fathers, rather. And he felt very much that American fatherhood had taken a blow to the gut because of World War II. And, you know, women in the workplace and all that kind of thing. Slacks all came out of World War II. Slacks on chicks, I mean.
Yeah,
guys
no,
didn't wear dresses before.
Yeah.
But I mean, no, it's always a fair question. And I think, you know, some things are perennial to the human condition. Some things are specific to particular times. And of course, which is which, you know, figuring out that in your particular time is always hard. There's, for instance, on one level, every generation has felt cheated by the generation before it. But that's truer sometimes than others. Many generations have felt lesser than the ones that came before them. But that also is true or not true, depending on the period. And you know, there's a reason why things like Oedipus Rex are perennial to the human condition, because our fathers form us. On the one hand, we measure ourselves against them. We have to, in order to assert our own manhood, we have to separate from them on the one hand, but on the other hand, they are the patterns, the models we have to go by. You know, what else do we have? I mean, if we've got fathers at all, which is what makes periods where fathers are somewhat scarce so terrible. Because then you got nobody to model yourself after, good, bad, or indifferent. You just got to kind of figure it out on your own or piece it together from other male-esque figures you may encounter. But putting that aside, if you just compare the kind of leaders we had, say, the year I was born, regardless of the damage World War II may have done, you look at people like de Gaulle, like Eisenhower, who's not, again, not my idea of a great man, but compare Eisenhower to the pygmies that we have running around today. Or forget Eisenhower, Reagan. I mean, these silly critters we've got. You could even compare Bush Sr. and Bush Jr. And Bush Sr., I think, made some of the most horrific mistakes any president ever made in my time. We're living with them now. But he was much, much more adept than his son was. That's why he didn't push the dagger all the way through in Baghdad. There's a reason Gulf War I did not turn into the cock-up of the forever wars. And Bush Sr. had enough on the ball to realize that's what would have happened. But of course, Bush Sr. had been in combat. You know, he had some idea of what he was ordering young men to do. That's not something that anyone since him has known. Not Clinton, not Bush Jr., not Oshmaka, not the Trumpster. Biden, who knows what he knows? He doesn't. You know, and then as far as Kamala goes, I mean, she might have known something about the comfort women in World War II, but beyond that, I don't think her knowledge extends very far. What? I don't think there's anything wrong with being a comfort woman. Do you?
No.
No. And you know, it's not like they were all. I look at Pamela Harriman. She was the queen of the comfort women, and I think Kamala Harris is basically like a cut-rate Pamela Harriman. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because I don't judge.
All right.
That's an interesting idea, though, about doing a show just about Dad. Gosh. But like a tribute show.
I mean, well, perhaps from your perspective, absolutely. But I think people just want to know everything about him. You know, the story of him, right? Like it's like a before time story. You know, it's like a fantasy story of people of the before time.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, I mean,
Definitely.
like it's almost like a story of Elrond or something.
Guy Coulombe was a mariner, a messenger, a foreigner who's tarried in Eldarion. Guy Coulombe was an elven king, of him the harpers sadly sing. The last his realm was fair and free between New Bedford and the sea. Oh man, I don't think anybody would appreciate it more than he would. Yeah, a man of legend. Well, you know, there was a certain amount of truth to that. I'll give it a think. He, you know, but he is so much a part of everything I am. You know, someone recently said to me who knows my family that my whole life has been a Guy Coulombe tribute show, a one-man Guy Coulombe tribute show. Because you know the thing is that about my father was that his failings, and he had them. And he was so spot on about so many things, and so prophetic about so many things. I mean, if he were around now, he wouldn't be happy, but he'd be surprised. And uh, that really keeps on hitting me. You know, a lot of characters you've known in your life, you think back and you think, my heavens, if they could see this now, what would they say? I know what Dad would have said. He'd have laughed. He said, well, what did you expect? You thought you were going to get something decent out of that? You see, son, if you plant garbage, guess what grows? But Dad, they're our brightest and our best. Yes, son, of course they are. What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? I learned our government must be strong. It's always right and never wrong. Our leaders are the men, and we elect them again and again. That's what I learned in school today. That's what I learned. What?
All right.
I'm sharing a song from my childhood.
That was a bad omen. All right,
Fine.
We're over an
end
hour.
On a happy. All right, we're ending on a happy note. I'm insisting on it. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
You ready to end on a happy note?
Yes.
All right. Easter's coming, everyone. Already the Easter baskets are appearing in the stores. The tulips, the daffodils, the flowers. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, We may be in the darkest depths of Lent right now, but it won't be Lent forever. Easter will come, and that's true both in a chronological, physical, and metaphysical sense. Because you know what? I'll leave you with this comforting thought. If we save our souls, we shall be divinized. We shall share the life of the Trinity. We shall be exposed to joy unending and, for the most part, unimaginable. That's what waits on the other side of Easter. So that was the secret of my Father's joy. It's the secret of whatever joy I've been able to retain. I hope it'll be the secret for yours, because there's really nothing else. That ultimately is why I've got no use for Evola and no use for anything else. Because what we're made for is partaking in the life of the Trinity. So the state of natural man, although it's unfortunate in the end, nevertheless, it's still better than not being at all. But church and sacraments, you've got redeemed man, whole other kettle of wax. And there we begin living the life of the Trinity on earth. Here we, through the sacraments, through all sorts of other things, life becomes far, far better if we'll allow it to. And there's the operative word, if we'll allow it to, than it is for natural man. And if we persevere, we die in a state of grace. Well, you think Satan hates us as natural men for our natural gifts and as redeemed men for our supernatural gifts. He can't abide it when any of us make it to heaven. Because then we have the joy unending that he is forever denied. So think about that, ladies and gentlemen, when you're tempted to get angry or upset about anything. And I, speaking as one who's constantly angry and upset about all sorts of things, I know what I'm talking about. Always let there be a point when you push that away and remember what it is we're really in the game for. Joy unending. The joy of Easter, the joy of Christmas, the joy of Pentecost. So, is that better?
That's perfect, Charles.
Okay.
Excellent.
You know
All right.
what we've got to move on to, though?
The full episode.
Yes, which you've been delaying me for just to cover up the fact that you've been abusive toward poor old Rose.
You can't know that. You are in a
You know what? I
position
don't know that. Gotcha there, smart guy. We'll see you in a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away.